Okay, this is real GDP, and your learning target is that you can calculate real GDP. So we got some focus questions. What are the two variables involved in calculating GDP? If GDP is higher in one year than another, do we automatically know why it is higher? And then what is the difference between GDP and real GDP? And then how do economists compute real GDP? We have two key terms here, base year and real GDP. So the two variables of GDP are just price and quantity, which we've been using for a long time now. So GDP is simply calculated by taking the price of a good and then multiplying it by the quantity. Okay, that's all you got to do. So if price is held constant, then any rise in GDP must be due to a rise in quantity. And how do we keep price constant? So economists do this by choosing what they call a base year. And that year is the year that they will use to compare all other years that they decide to compare. The base year is always considered to have a starting value of 100. Okay, and when you get to the work, you'll see what that means more than right now. But real GDP is equal to the price of the base year times the quantity in the current year. Okay, and again, this will make more sense right here. All right, so let's assume that 2018 is our base year. Okay. So we're going to take $25. That's the price of our basketball. We multiply that by the number of basketballs, so P times Q, and that equals 375,000. That is our gross domestic product. Now, if we were to look at the real gross domestic product, its starting value is 100. So what's 100% of this? So over here, we would put in the same number. So I don't think I can write on this. This is $375,000. Okay. Now, 2020, the price of basketballs has gone up by $2. It's $27, but the quantity has dipped. It's now 13,000. So you're going to take $27 and you're going to multiply that by 13,000, and you get 351,000. So you're going to take that number and you put that right there at 351,000. So how do you figure out the real gross domestic product? Well, the variable in this is the quantity. The fixed factor in this is the price. So since 2018 is my base year, I'm going to take $25, okay, and I'm going to multiply that by my quantity, which is 13. So I go over here and I take 25 and I multiply that by 13,000, and I get 325,000. So this was 375,000. This is 325,000. So this means that my real gross domestic product has declined, okay, by $50,000. So it's pretty significant. All right. When economists compute GDP by using comparisons to a base year, they are said to be computing what's called real GDP. And real GDP is equal to the price of the current year multiplied by the quantity of the current year. But real GDP, as I stated, it's equal to the price of the base year multiplied by the quantity. Okay. So how do economists determine what year will be a base year when calculating real GDP? Well, really, there's no actual simple answer for this. The base year, it has to be in the past, but it can't be too far in the past that it makes it irrelevant. So, for example, like economists aren't going to pick the date of 1865 as their base year, and the reason why is because it's so far in the past. For one thing, like in 1865, our economy was based on agrarian things, where today it's based on manufacturing and technology. So it wouldn't be a good comparison, but it's 2020, right? I could use the year 2000. I could use 1985. I could use something like that. But there's no hard and fast rule, okay? Now, there are years that would not be good to use as your base year, too. And so, for example, 2007, that was the year that the Great Recession began. That would not be an ideal choice for a base year because it's going to be an artificial number. It's going to be deflated. So, you know, it is a random number, okay? But there are parameters. It has to be relevant, and it shouldn't skew based on local or global events, national or global events. And then why do we figure out what real GDP is at all? Well, economists, they want to compute real GDP because they want to see what's actually happening to the production of goods over time. Remember, GDP is GDP is the price of a good times the quantity. If price is going up, right, and quantity is not going up, that means that the GDP, the GDP is not increasing. This is a sign of economic problems. If real GDP is going up and it's based on price, that means that inflation is at play, okay? So, for example, real GDP growth in a single year isn't really that important, but how much it grows over time does matter. And it's not going to matter in a single year because real GDP would be equal to 100% or whatever the base year is. So, for centuries, though, if you look at human like manufacture of goods, right? It was pretty flat all the way to this point, the 19th century. And if you have world history, you should know why, or U.S. history, and that is because of the Industrial Revolution and things spike. Look at the 20th century, though. As innovative as the 19th century was, the 20th century has just taken off. And as a result of this, if you were to travel back in time between the 11th century and the 18th century, you could go beyond. You could go back further than the 11th century if you chose. But the quality of life was not very different. Okay, things people who are alive in the 20th and then of course the 21st century, our life, our standard of living is incredibly better than those of the past. You can watch Mr. Clifford's movie, and that's it. Okay, easy peasy. Thanks, guys. Oh, yeah, don't have to worry about this part. Bye.